The main idea of Shakespeare in the Bush is that stories do not have universal meaning, even when they are considered classics. Laura Bohannon travels to West Africa, believing that Hamlet is a story whose theme and lesson will be understood anywhere. When she tells the story to the Tiff people, however, they interpret major events and characters based on their own cultural rules. Instead of accepting Shakespeare's original intention, they reshape the story to fit their beliefs about family, authority, marriage, and supernatural. Bohannon gradually realized that meaning is not contained solely in the text itself. Meaning is created through cultural context and worldview. The article ultimately shows that what seems obvious or universal in one culture can be interpreted very differently in another. The article strongly demonstrates how worldview shapes interpretation. The Tiff people understand the events of Hamlet through their own cultural belief about kingship, inheritance, and witchcraft. For example, they do not see the ghost as a restless spirit, but as a sign of witchcraft or an omen sent for a reason. They also judge Hamlet's behavior based on Tiff's social rules, questioning why he does not act more decisively or follow accepted family obligations. Bohannon's explanation, which rely on Western logics, do not clarify the story for the Tiff because they conflict with their worldview. This shows that worldview influences what people see and reasonable, moral, or even possible. Interpretation is not neutral. It is shaped by cultural experience. Article. One clear ethnocentric bias in the article is Bohannon's initial belief that her interpretation of Hamlet is the correct one. She assumes Shakespeare's version of the story represents a universal truth and that the Tiff are misunderstanding it. When they interpret key elements such as marriage, custom, or the role of ghost, she tries to correct them rather than recognizing their cultural logic. The bias comes from her Western education, where Shakespeare is treated as timeless and universally meaningful. Although Bohannon becomes more reflexive by the end of the story, her early reaction reveals how worldview shapes perception. Her assumption that Western literature holds universal meaning shows how ethnocentrism can limit understanding of other cultures. The story challenges the idea that one's own culture value are normal or best. Bohannon expects to be the authority of the story, but the Tiff elders confidently correct her and reinterpret the plot according to their customs. From their perspective, her version of the story contains flaws because it ignores important social rules. The Tiff do not see Western explanation as superior or more accurate. Instead, they rely on their own cultural knowledge. This reversal forces Bohannon to confront the limit of her assumptions. The article shows that cultural norms only feel natural because they are familiar. What seems logic in one culture may seem strange or incorrect in another, emphasizing that normal is culturally defined. Culture. In my culture, punctuality is considered very important. Being on time is often associated with respect, responsibility, and professionalism. Arriving late can be interpreted as careless or rude, even if no harm is intended. Time is viewed as something fixed and limited, which must be managed carefully. However, someone from a culture that values flexibility or relationship over schedules might see this norm as rigid or impersonal. They may prioritize conversation and connection over strict timing. This difference is reflects how our worldview shapes expectation and judgment. Just as Steve interprets Hamlet through their cultural values, outsiders may interpret our norms in ways we do not expect or intend. Communication. A best practice for cross-cultural communication is to suspend the belief that your interpretation is the correct one. Instead of correcting others, it is more effective to ask questions and try to understand their perspective. In the article, Bohannon initially resists the Tiv expectation of Hamlet, but she learns more when she listens rather than argues. Their expectation reveals a consistent cultural logic, even though it differs from her own. Effective communication across cultures requires humility and openness. By recognizing the worldview shape perception, individuals can avoid misunderstanding and build mutual respect. Listening with goals of understanding rather than persuading is essential in intercultural interactions. I once observed a cultural misunderstanding where direct communication was interpreted as rude, even though it was meant to be efficient and honest. This experience is similar to Bohannon's storytelling challenges. Bohannon's storytelling challenge, where her intention did not align with how her message was received. In both cases, differing worldviews shape interpretation and emotional response. The most significant lesson I gained from Shakespeare in the Bush is that meaning is not universal. Communication, stories, and values are filtered through culture. Understanding this helps prevent judgment and encourage patience. Recognizing the impact of worldview is essential for successful intercultural communication and for respecting perspectives different from our own.